Hello and welcome to Indie Game Spotlight. Today I am joined by Travis and Seth from Interaction Games, where we are talking about Altered World. Welcome to Indie Game Spotlight, both.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hi, glad to be here.
And also joining me today is my co-host, Dean. Say hello, Dean.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so thank you for joining us. And the first question, the question I always start with, what inspired you to make Altered World?
Well, so we're not the original creators. We were part of the development team back in the late 19th century or 1900s, late 20th century. So we had some friends that were making a game, Altered World, back in the late 90s. We were part of the development and playtesting team back then. And they got to where they were ready to start trying to do some guerrilla marketing. At the time, the way for a truly indie game to get noticed would be to show up and make some kind of a big scene at Gen Con.
Yeah.
And that was their plan. The problem is that they needed, $20,000 to do an offset print back in the day. And $20,000 in the late 90s was a lot of money. And so
I just checked my bank account and it's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of fast forward 25 years, it a little withered on the vine. Seth and I were talking one day, and just reminiscing about how much fun we had with the game. And Seth was like, man, it's really too bad it's all gone. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been carrying around a physical proofreading copy for the last quarter century.
Yeah, what Travis isn't saying is that this existed virtually or digitally on Mike's computer. Mike was one of the original authors of the game. And through a series of terrible luck, like 2 hard drive crashes and just more bad luck on top of that, he lost everything that he'd written. And this was before things got uploaded to the cloud, right? It was on a CD, it was on a thumb drive, it was on a hard drive, whatever. Everything got zeroed out somehow. And so they'd already mourned this game as lost. I tried to get a copy of it in the intervening years. And we're talking a lot of years, right? This was the late 90s, early 2000s. We were playing this. And now here it is, 2022 or something like that Travis and I had this conversation. So a lot of years have passed. And this thing is supposed to be dead and buried, and the ghost is even given up. And then Travis just drops out with like, "Wait, I just happen to have this book that I've been dragging around through all my military life, moving every few years. I've preserved this thing." I was like, "Does Mike know?" Travis was like, I haven't talked to Mike in over 20 years. Well, would you like his phone number? Fortunately, I had Mike's phone number, and Travis had Mike's work, and we were all able to connect the dots. Mike and John and JP, the other 2 original creators of this beast, they gave their blessing. They said, "Hey, we already mourned this thing. We said goodbye to it. But if you guys can resurrect it, you have our blessing. Go forth and make $1 million." So hopefully we can start getting some traction on this thing. It's a really cool game.
That's brilliant. And so it was back in the 90s. I mean, I remember the amount of stuff we've lost on CDs, on floppy disks, you name it, we've lost it since the 90s. Photos, everything that went by the by. So yeah, losing the game, that must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah. And to the direct question, right, of what inspired the game. This was very much a reaction to the games that were popular at the time, right? It is a science fantasy setting, and so it's very heavily inspired by Shadowrun. You can see that. You can see a very heavy GURPS and Riffs influence. In fact, like my 30-second pitch on it is you take Shadowrun, GURPS, and Riffs and throw them in a blender and that's kind of what you end up with. It gets you in the in the pitch, right? But then the other thing was it was a reaction to the way that mechanics worked in AD&D Second Edition. It was also a reaction to the rise of the World of Darkness at the time, with these games with these massive dice pools. You talk to Mike and he's like, I was broke. And so I wanted a game that didn't use any more than 2 dice. And that's all he wanted to do. And so that was part of how he designed all the mechanics. And so it's, if you wanted to go down the road of media influence, there's all kinds of movies and music and stuff that we can point to. But from a gaming perspective, that's really kind of the influence that drove it.
Well, I have to say, 1, the 90s was well cool for games. 2, Shadowrun. How much fun did we used to have with Shadowrun? So not a bad inspiration at all for any game. And 3, music and movies of the 90s. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but we still watch movies from the 90s.
We do.
We prefer the
Plenty of good
I'm
ones
just
to
old
pick from,
though.
that's for sure.
Yeah, there's plenty hold up even by today's standards. Yeah.
And the early 2000s, we can't shut them out.
Oh no, we can't. There's some good movies there.
We'll allow them to sneak in a little bit.
Right on.
Just a bit though. So that's absolutely cool. And, the fact that they've given you their blessing to continue this is nice, because at the end of the day, you're all together and it was all your little baby at the time. And now you're taking it forward. So it's been revived. So I have my crunch scale. If I was to say something very light, something where you're like creating characters in like 10, 15 minutes versus something very crunchy with lots of complex maths, think Pathfinder, I call that crunchy. Where would you be on the light to crunch scale?
We're going to fall closer to Pathfinder.
Yeah. I would put us, so like in the, I try to range it in, the lightest system I kind of know of is Caltrop Core.
Okay.
And then, Pathfinder, obviously, although I would even say the top end for me is Rollmaster.
Oh, yeah.
We're definitely not there. I'd say, if it was a 1 to 10 scale, I'd put us at somewhere around 6 or 7. That being said, I think it doesn't play like a crunchy game. And that's because while we have discrete rules for specific things, because I know I, in particular, lean more towards I want to be able to achieve system mastery. For me, that's an important part of gameplay. And I like having an objective ruling that says, I know that when I do X, if this result happens, then this is the in-game effect.
Outcome. Yeah.
And so we have discrete rules that cover things that are probably not covered in a lot of games, but they also, some of them don't take a lot of, like they don't take space. Unless you're specifically doing that thing, you don't ever have to worry about that game. I think the example that always comes to mind to me with this is if you've got somebody who was in the military during the global war on terror, and they were a machine gunner, and they want their character, like they know how to operate a machine gun, and they want their character to operate that machine gun in the ways that they know they can do things. We want to give them rules that say, here's how that works. Yeah. But if that's not you, you don't ever have to worry about that. And excellent. So, yeah, we funnel everything through a couple of different resolution mechanics, and we're actually in the process of even streamlining it even more. And it plays very fast. That being said, I think, Seth, why don't you talk about the character creation side of it? Because I think that for us is kind of a core pillar, and it is a little more lengthy.
Yeah. So broadly speaking, there are 3 or 4 different ways you can create a character. Probably the easiest is to just take a pre-gen, right? All the work is done. Right now in our Beer and Pretzels kit, there are 10 pre-generated characters. That's not really character creation, though, right? That's just grabbing one, or somebody else did the work. And then you can go through the character modeling process, which is kind of algorithmic in that there are a bunch of if-then questions that the game master can guide a new player through. You don't have to have any knowledge of this game or even really of role-playing games, right? It's designed for the novice player, not novice to the system, novice to the hobby. The game master works with the player to guide them through a series of choices that ends up with a character. You figure out where you want to place your emphasis or your emphasis, and you have a budget of character creation points to spend. But those questions really help guide you to where to spend the bulk of those points. And that doesn't have to take very long, right? And you can also do that in a group. That's some of the first stuff we ever did with this game back in the day, was just sit down and do character modeling with a group of 5 or 6 people. So once you've done that a few times, once you've played a few times and you have a more intimate understanding of how the rules work, then you're ready to tackle full creation, which is kind of this no holds barred process where you get to just unleash your creativity. And one of the things we really love about this game is it lets you create the character that you really want to. You're not pigeonholed, you're not forced down a certain path once you do this full creation method of making your character. It's a lot of fun. It is a little mathy because it's point-based, so you have a budget. Good practice for everybody in the real world to stay in a budget, right?
Budgets.
Budgets. It's the things that you think are targets to exceed.
Oh, that's the word. Yes, yes. I always do.
It's
like
a high
to
score
exceed.
for you. Can I beat that high score? Yes.
It is. That's totally. I like to roll high.
Yeah. And then the nice thing is, as you play the game, there are ways to advance your character, right? That's not unique to this hobby. I think the way we do it is pretty unique. And we can talk about that once we're done with character creation.
Cool.
So there are
I'm gonna just ask you. I'm just gonna take you back a step because I'm evil like that. And Travis, I think you mentioned that Mike didn't want the system to have too many dice.
Yes.
So at the moment we're talking about character creation and points.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the dice that are used? Because that might help when you're talking around the character creation, because
Sure.
when you start getting into detail, I'll know what dice you're using.
Yeah. So the only dice that are used in the game are 2d10.
Just 2d10. No
Just
others
2d10.
at all?
No. Yeah. We don't have any other dice that get rolled. We are originally, there were some dice rolls that were made with just one D10. And they were bi-directional. You had sometimes you wanted to roll low, sometimes you wanted to roll high. We found that in practice that in playtest that is it's a barrier.
Friction. Yeah.
Yeah, it causes some friction for a lot of players, especially given I think it was less of an issue in the late 90s because everyone was coming from a context of THACO. That was everybody's frame of reference. And so now you've got 25 years of the D20 system, and we acknowledge that D&D is the gateway drug. And so the idea that there are sometimes I want to roll low and sometimes I want to roll high, if you apply a little bit of thought about what you're trying to do, it makes sense. But I think in the moment with new players especially, it was causing some friction. And so we've gone through and done a bunch of work recently, and we've essentially eliminated the low version of that. And we're even working towards trying to almost completely eliminate the high version of the single dice roll. So it would just be 2d10 for almost everything you're going to do.
Now that's interesting. I've got questions around that, but that's good. So I know the dice.
Yeah.
So now we can go back to the characters. It's just that then I've got that 2d10 in my head, and that means when you're going to the character creation, I can relate it back. So go on, Seth. We talked about there's like 4 different methods. One, of course, is pre-gen. Then you've got your modeling where you've got a sort of if-then sort of point system that you go through with the GM. And then you were going through some of the other methods that you've got.
Yeah, I think that caps off with full creation. We'll call it 3 methods
3
instead
methods.
of 4. Cool. And to be clear, you don't have to roll any dice during character creation. There's no randomly generated stats because it is a point buy system.
So how many attributes? So when you're talking about point buy, have you got attributes? What are your points going towards?
Points on everything, right? Every aspect of your character. You may spend it on a playable species. You may spend it on Naosh, which is a funny made-up word that speaks to how you might interact or access supernatural powers. And then, you've got your attributes, you've got your talents, and a whole other bucket we call extras, like level, interaction, lifestyle, stuff like that. Some of which feel very minor, but if you don't invest in them later, that might come back to be an issue. So there's this tension between, well, you can't have it all, right? That's the nice thing about being on a budget. You got to pick what's important to you, and you can spread yourself really evenly and try and be good at lots of things, or you can really be a specialist and focus heavily on one thing and hope that other players around you pick up the slack where you're not so strong.
So, right, I've just been informed I'm on a budget, and we all know I like to beat my budget. So what would my budget be?
We start with the idea of 15 character creation points, or CCPs. You'll hear us talk about CCPs a lot. And those further get broken down into group points. So most things are purchased at a 1-for-1. There are some things that are a little bit more formulaic. Level, for instance, you can purchase your level. What's that, Trev?
Aura.
Thank you. Aura, yeah. Another change we've made. Because level, people bring their preconceived notions from other games to that. So we're trying to distinguish that a little bit and call it aura.
Okay.
You don't have to start at level 1, right? If you want to spend points and start at a higher aura, you can. Just that happens to cost 3 points per rating. Whereas something like if you want to put points into your strength attribute, that's 1-for-1.
Okay, so we just mentioned attributes. Is it what I would class as the normal attribute, Ray, or because I know you said there was a few other things like your talents and stuff? Are they classed as attributes? How many things have I got to spend my 15 points on?
Yeah, so you can think of it. So it's 15 CCPs, and the reason we divide them, we say it's 15, it's really 150 points is the way to think about it.
No, that's more like it. I like 150 points.
What we found was, and it's, you can call it whatever you want. We found that people seemed to respond more quickly to the idea of, I've got 15 CCPs, and then when I'm buying attributes, a CCP is 10 attribute points. Or
that makes sense. Okay.
And so you've got your primary attributes that there's 8 of them: strength, agility, dexterity, and fitness, and then intelligence, perception, reaction, and psyche. And then those get combined into derived secondary attributes that you don't have to spend extra points on. You can increase those directly by purchasing an advantage, which is kind of like a feat. And then you've got your talents. You may or may not have powers. When you purchase a talent, you purchase the talent itself, and then you purchase the rating of the talent. Same with the power. You purchase the power itself, and then you purchase the rating separately. And then you have your advantages, the extras that Seth talked about with aura, interaction, lifestyle. You can spend points to have just wealth and just have lots of money. I mean,
be rich.
It's a completely viable character creation strategy to just say, I'm just going to be a normal human and take, the remainder of, 12 CCPs and just dump it into money. And then you solve all your problems with technology because you can just throw money at it.
Reminds me of what I used to do with Shadowrun. I always used to go for the top amount of money.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to think. The only other thing that goes in there is we have drawbacks, which are kind of like anti-feats that give you additional points that you can use to build your other stuff.
Cool. So sort of negative things that could affect you in game, but at the same point gets offset by having a nice little something or other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so those drawbacks are interesting because they do provide a mechanical detriment to your character, right? If you take one of those, you are electing to hamper your gameplay in certain areas. And if you choose that wisely and carefully, you can make that manageable or even fun, right? We like to think of ourselves as being a very character-driven game, very story-driven. And so you could choose a bunch of the same features or characteristics to attach to your character without having to take any drawbacks at all. And the idea would be that a game master would grant more role-playing experience for that later on. A lot of times I think those drawbacks are really where the character gets made, and they give the game master some hooks. There's some talk on some of the Dungeon Tube videos about knives, right? Drawbacks are your knives that the game master can use to poke at the character and at the story as a whole. I really like that system.
Well, Dean.
Yes.
I think it's time for you to lift the hood on the mechanics, ask all your deep and meaningful questions, and get out your maths calculator while I sit here with my fingers and go.
Absolutely. Okay, so what I'm getting straight away is overtures of Shadowrun character creation. That kind of your point system. I believe Shadowrun started with your A, B, C, D allocation, and they moved to more of a point system where you could actually have your attributes and skills on a tie and stuff like that. So we've talked about. Sorry, Henny, what was that?
I was just reminiscing about Shadowrun.
I know.
Just leave me.
Yes. Lots of dice, though. Lots of dice.
Yeah, but I know. Giant handful of D6s. Math clanks. Shiny math rocks. I like them.
So it sounds like you got a lot you can spend your points on when creating a character. So let's start with your attributes. What is the typical range of an attribute?
So a human is going to come in at a 2 or a 3 to represent average. They have a maximum rating of 5 in any of those body attributes. Different species have different attribute maximums.
Good. I love that.
Yeah. We went with the idea that, and this was originally Mike's idea, but really it's a matter of, if you're one of the species is a Temenvir, and you can think of them as kind of like the trolls from Shadowrun is clearly where they were inspired. They're not inherently stronger, but they have a dramatically higher strength potential.
Yeah.
And so it steers away from what appears to be a sociologically problematic method now of you choose your species and you get bonuses, to really more of it just is these things are bigger, they're taller, they're broader, they can carry more muscle mass, they will be stronger on average.
Yeah. Okay. And when you create your character, if I put, say, 3 points into attributes, that's 30 points I get to spend on the attributes. Mm-hmm. Is it a simple 1-for-1 at that point? Yeah. So there's no ratcheting system or anything like that when you create your character?
No, there are a couple of things that do. It's not really ratcheting. So, like as Seth said, right, humans have our normal range from 1 to 5.
Yeah.
There are traits that can increase that. So the idea is that, for example, Hafthor Bjornsson, right? On our strength scale, the way that strength is a really useful attribute to look at because you can peg it to hard data, right? You can say that for every point of strength, you can lift 50 kilos, right? And so Hafthor Bjornsson clearly can lift 500 kilos. So his strength is well above 5. But that's not a virtue necessarily of his base attribute. We look at that as we have a trait. Originally, it was called SPED, and we've changed it again for socio reasons to unbound attribute. But the idea is that you can exceed your natural physical maximums or your natural species maximums, and you can go up to double. And so it just represents this is somebody who has had some level of exceptional training that allows you to go beyond what most people would consider the normal maximum for your species.
Nice.
And so in that point, the attribute doesn't become more expensive, but you do have to spend points to get unbound attribute, and then you're still on a 1-for-1 basis of the actual attribute points.
Yeah.
So how much, for example, would unbound cost me of my character creation points?
It would
but separately for your body attributes and your mind attributes. So it costs 3 points to get in the door. You have it, and then you got to spend points on the rating.
So I want to get to a strength of 10. I'm spending 3 of my points straight away, and then half a point effectively to get those 5 additional attribute points to go above. So long as that attribute was maxed to begin with.
Just to clarify, if you were a normal human and you wanted to get to a strength of 10, you'd spend 5 on your strength originally.
Yeah, 5 on strength.
3, so it's 3 group points. So it's not 30, it's that 0.3. So you'd spend 1.3 CCPs on your strength alone.
Right, got it. Okay. Out of the 15 you've got?
1.8, right? Because you bought the rating.
Yeah.
1.8, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So you're right. There's a bit of maths here, but this is character creation, and if you've got an involved character creation that allows you to do a lot of things, then maths is to be expected. It's kind of once and done kind of affair. What are my attributes used for?
They marry up with mostly the talents that you can buy. We're going through some changes on this now, so Travis might have a better grip on this, but we're going to take all those attributes and we're going to cook them a little bit and come up with some secondary attributes, right? Derived, as Travis said. So those are established through a formula. You've already spent the points, and you take those secondary attributes, you compare that, or you combine it rather with your talent rating, and that'll give you an idea of the base that you're looking at in order to start rolling.
Okay.
Yeah. So what Seth is talking about is that the original game there were 8 primary attributes and 5 secondary that were derived. And then you had a lot of talents that were pegged to primary attributes. But then what happened was you had a not insignificant number of them because we use a subskill specialization system within our talents, where the different subskills didn't all map to the same attribute. And so it made things confusing on the character sheet of like, which attribute am I doing? A good one to discuss as an example of this is the espionage talent. The espionage talent has the cryptography, image analysis, and infiltration are all subskills. But cryptography and image analysis are both intelligence-based skills. Yeah. Infiltration, on the other hand, is like being an undercover cop. And so it's based off your interaction. And so now you've got this, I've got to have different numbers for the same we've done a little bit of rearranging and shuffling with our character or with our talents. But what we've done is we've now moving to, I think we settled on 8 secondary attributes. that are averages of some of your primary attributes. So you purchase your primary attributes that determine your kind of raw capability, and then those combine together into almost like domains of expertise, right? And so, for example, we have one that is athleticism. So it's the average of your strength, agility, dexterity, and fitness. And so that would go to the athletics talent or the gymnastics talent. But things like combat is combat is strength, agility, perception, and reaction. So it's a joint mental and physical attribute. And so that maps to the combat talents, melee combat talent specifically. And so that's the direction we're going. Interaction is still its own independent thing that you purchase separately, primarily because we wanted to keep it outside of the species boundaries. The idea that the ability to interact with people and be charismatic is not inherently limited by your species.
So that becomes more of a it's you, your personality, which isn't species defined. Really, it's you. It goes beyond species.
Yeah, and certain species may have advantages, right? We have, for example, we have a she, the equivalent of elves, and they are, as a species, they tend to be physically beautiful, and so the average person, they will have a higher interaction in general because people tend to respond well to physical beauty, but that just means that they have, again, a little bit higher potential, or not really even higher potential. It's really more that they get a bonus to it.
They've got a head start.
But they get a head start. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
And someone can put the effort in the points and become just as beautiful, but they kind of get it for free, and then they can develop it a bit further.
Yeah, and then if you want to min-max, right, like if you want to really lean into that, start with a she and then start dumping more points into that, and okay, you can really go places with that.
Yeah, but then amongst the she, you are even more beautiful than the average she. So it's those grades of that makes perfect sense. And your talents are your kind of skills with your. So when you purchase a talent, say I want to be able to wield a fully automatic weapon, something like that.
Okay.
Gunnery, brilliant. So I buy the gunnery talent, and then I've got to spend points to say what rank or what level the gunnery talent is. Yeah.
And here's where things get a little gnarly, because you were asking about ratcheting earlier, and you're gonna run into this. If you want to keep things simple, we could just go up to a rating of 5. You may purchase ranks above that, but they get more expensive with each rank, so that things don't get out of hand at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, but sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's
okay.
Yeah.
No, it's what we try to do is when you start talking about a fully quantified system, you very quickly start saying, oh well, what is Simone Biles's gymnastics talent or whatever, right? And in order to kind of give a frame of reference, we kind of get this idea that somebody that you would consider a fully professional at a given talent is around a rating 5. And then above that, you start getting into the way you do that is you either spend incrementally more and more time getting better, or you narrow your focus.
Yeah.
And you start taking sub skills and or masteries. So it's, medicine is a good example of this, right? A doctor might have a medicine talent of 5, but a surgeon might have a surgery talent rating of 6. That sub skill, and a neurosurgeon may have neurosurgery at rating 7, or something like that. But then if you do that at character creation, you are reducing your base talent also. So it's that to reflect the additional time that's necessary to focus on that specialty, you have to kind of let some other things go.
Yeah. And so all this starts to sound really complicated, right? And it is.
It's only complicated the first time.
Right.
I mean, Shadowrun was complicated the first time we did it. Every game is, because you're not used to it.
I really appreciate you saying that, because that is one of the things that we run into. We take this game to different conventions and we play with people and we get their feedback, but play at one convention is they play at one time, right? We have to kind of impress them with our product right out the gate. And so we're not doing character creation. We're giving them pre-gens, right?
Yeah.
Also, if you're new to the game and you go through the character modeling process, you don't have the option of doing some of these more complicated things. And that leaves a little bit of possibility for full creation to make that a little bit more enjoyable and fun and have some novelty to discover all that. But it also sets that aside while you're really just sort of learning and establishing your presence in this game and your familiarity with the rules. So you can take this in stages and in somewhat smaller bites so that you're not just thrown into the deep end. But getting back to the mechanics of it, because I think the question that this leads to, and Dean, I'll take your job from you, is like, well, what are we rolling and how do we roll, right? So 2d10, you're going to take your secondary attribute that we've calculated. If we take combat as an example, or let's use accuracy because you wanted gunnery, right? So accuracy and gunnery, they marry up. We've dumped 5 points into our gunnery talent, and through a series of math and plussing and dividing and all kinds of horrible mathy things, we've determined that our accuracy is arbitrarily, we'll just say 3, right? So once we have that, then we can figure out what our base is that we want to meet or exceed on 2d10. You want to jump in there, Travis?
Yeah. So, and this is an area where we've kind of gone back and forth. Originally, and again, this goes back to when the game was created, everyone's frame of reference was THAC0. And so backwards math wasn't terribly confusing for most people.
Or at least they've made their peace with it. And for those who, I'm just going to jump in there, Travis, sorry.
Yeah.
But for those who are not old school grognards like some of us, THAC0 is an old term from the way back. Dungeons and Dragons, it used to be the lower your armor class, the harder it was to hit you. And so as a benchmark, there was this idea of THAC0, which was to hit armor class 0. And so a lower THAC0 was good, because then you could hit a lower armor class, which just meant you were more effective. Future versions of D&D changed that. Higher armor class was desirable and rolling higher was better.
However, I'm going to interrupt you there. I'm going to interrupt you there and just remind the folks who are watching on this subject of THAC0. If you take a look, Dean, you could put a link to it off this video. We have Dean's love letter to THAC0, all right, which is on our channel. Have a watch of that. It will explain all of the wonderful intricacies of THAC0 and why it remains close to our hearts,
and
even though we can't use it
today.
So yes, we have got a love letter to THAC0. It is one thing we absolutely, when we loved it when we were playing second edition, so we completely understand. And yes, so look up wherever it's going to be over there. That's it. Over there.
I'll put a
link,
touch link.
Links,
But don't
link
touch it
to
now.
the
Come back later and touch it.
Come back later and touch it. Yeah. Yes. Finish watching this one first.
In fact,
I'll
put it in the descriptions. You can enjoy this interview, then click on it in the descriptions.
And
after you've clicked on our guests' socials and stuff like that.
Yeah. But as I've got you all and I've got your undivided attention, can I remind you all, if you haven't already, do not forget to like, and if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. It's really important. It helps us with the algorithm, and it also helps us get the word out about all of these fantastic games. And Altered World is one of those fantastic games. We want to get the word out about it. Pick up those 2D10 and get rolling. So back to those 2D10, Seth and Travis. We want to hear more.
You had interrupted me. I'd interrupted Travis. Travis, back to you.
Yeah. So what the original system, we went with a fixed success threshold of 20. So the idea is that in order to succeed at your task, you're trying to achieve 20 on 2D10. And what Mike's original vision was, and where we've kind of stepped away and then stepped back, I think, and that's kind of we're back at the OG method, is you take 20, you subtract your talent rating, you subtract your attribute rating, and that is the number you need to roll on your dice to be successful at your task.
So in this example, we've got a gunnery of 5 and an accuracy of 3. So we take 20, subtract 5, subtract 12. 3. Somebody
even I can do that math.
Even
I can do that math.
So you need to roll 12 on your 2d10. It's a nice, simple. I mean, it's just whether you're adding to the dice or subtracting from the number you need, but effectively you get to the same place.
And that's actually the divergence that we've gone through very recently, was that we started to wonder. There was actually a couple of other mechanics that ended up being mathematically broken, that we discovered were mathematically broken, and started trying to fix them, and realized, oh wait, maybe we need to figure out a way to reverse the direction so that it's what everyone expects. You roll your dice, you add your number, you come up with what you're trying to get to. And what we decided was we really, really like, both from a just enjoyment perspective on ourselves, but also from the as a almost kind of a branding thing of making it unique. We really like the idea that it's not percentile based, and the number you need to roll to determine success is on your character sheet. And so you may have to do a little bit of math up front before you roll your dice by saying, if we've got these conditional modifiers, we're going to add or subtract those to your what we call it the ARB. We're not sure that that's going to be the final name, but it stands for action roll base. So you adjust your target number and then you just roll your dice. And so the player is able to instantly determine whether or not they were successful.
Yeah.
Then they can go through and figure out, because we use degrees of success. The points above your target number can be spent in really interesting ways. And so we decided to keep that because we like the idea that the character just looks, or the player looks at their character sheet and knows what they need to roll, and they can. There is a speed element to the way that gameplay ends up happening, and it's 2 or 3 different. It really shows up in combat. There's 2 or 3 different mechanics that all play together to take what arguably is a fairly crunchy system and make it run really fast. Like to the point where I think there was a con that we did last year I went to, and I had 4 brand new players. There were 8 NPCs, 4 of which were combatants, 4 of which were non-combatants. And it was 8 turns of combat, and it took about 45 minutes. And that's not even as fast as you can go with it, because these players being new, there's some, because of the way the dice and everything work out, you can, they weren't quite ready for the advanced level of how the dice rolling is called for. So
if you compare that to an average night playing D&D, you got 4 players at the table. The game master pulls out 4 goblins and 4 ogres or something like that, and you got to start rolling initiative. After 45 minutes, I mean, we haven't even unpacked snacks yet, right? Like, things are just getting started. Whereas with this system, you can roll through a little bit more efficiently if you're kind of spun up on how to do it. And to Travis's point, even if not, right, we were able to shepherd new players through that system pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a quick question regarding how this is presented, because obviously the way things are presented can make something complicated appear incredibly simple. So I've got my gunnery 5, I got my accuracy 3. Would I just have next to my gunnery skill 12? Yes. Indicating whenever I use that skill, I need 12 or higher. I've done the maths ahead of time. I don't need to do the maths again at the table.
There you go.
The only caveat to that is that you would also have, it would be gunnery, your rating.
Yeah.
Because that can change in gameplay. And then the character sheet we're redesigning would tell you what attribute that goes with. And then at the end of it, you would have the 12, right? Yeah. And then
when you say your rating can change during gameplay, is that when you invest points to increase it?
Yes.
Yes.
That's one way.
At that point, you recalculate. Yeah.
And of course, yes. So what sort of? I'm gonna, because you've mentioned situational modifiers a few times.
Yeah.
Can you sort of go into that a little bit? Give us some examples and how much it actually modifies your numbers, because then Dean will get all happy and math happy.
Oh yes.
Sure. And these things are going to be, every table is going to have their own feel for that, right? You know, if somebody had dropped a smoke bomb in the middle of the field of battle, then that might have an impact on your ability to locate targets. So we might say, all right, well, now you got to add a little bit to your ARB, and adding to your ARB is bad because that makes it harder to hit, right? You now have to roll higher. Or I don't know, maybe you did really good maintenance on your gun or something like that, and so it's cycling really well, and you have a -1 bonus to your ARB. There's a couple standard ones in there, like firing from an advantageous position is going to give you a bonus, and then there are things that other characters can do that will impact your ability to hit, like if they declare a defensive action, like they want to avoid the bullets that you're sending their way, they're going to make a roll to see how good they are at avoiding, and that's going to impact how good you are at shooting.
Would that be their action effectively for the round, or is that in? So they, when it comes around to them acting, they're effectively saying, "Look, I know guns are pointed at me. All I'm going to do is look to dive for cover and get out the way."
Yeah. And so, without getting too much into it, because I don't want to get away from the core mechanics yet, what is worth talking about right now very briefly is that this touches on our initiative system is fundamentally different from any other game we've ever played, in the sense that unlike with D&D, which is, again, everybody's frame of reference easily.
And we're not bashing in D&D.
It's just different.
Right. No, it's a frame of reference. You can guarantee every one of us, when we talk about our systems, we go, well, D&D does it like this, but this is how we do it. Because everybody who here has not actually played D&D.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Answered that question.
So, like most games have kind of taken the cue from D&D that if you win initiative, you act first, right? With our system, the initiative order determines the order in which you declare your actions. And the winner declares their action last, so that they know what everyone else is doing.
Somebody got it fast. Vicky's quick.
And then we resolve, and it sounds super messy, but because of the way our dice systems work, you can resolve all actions simultaneously.
And that's how you do combat so fast. If you're all resolving it, because you've already declared your actions,
right?
So the person who got the best initiative knows what everyone's doing, so they can react to that. Does the GM actually tell you what the opposition is doing as well? Yeah,
it goes down the exact order. And so, like, you have maximum. If you win initiative, you have maximum information about what's happening. And that's why we don't call it initiative. We call it response.
Yeah.
Because
if Dean had won the response roll and he was sighting down the barrel of his machine gun to engage with targets, if Vicky's character had declared earlier and said, well, I know Dean's out there and he's got a machine gun. I don't want to get hit, so I'll avoid. Dean could say, well, I don't want to shoot at Vicky. I'll shoot at Travis, who decided to charge. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have more information. Knowledge is power, and this is a great way to reflect it on the battlefield.
I like that.
And so procedurally, not mechanically, but procedurally, what we do is we go through and everybody declares what their action is. And then the game master can say, if you're taking a defensive action, roll your dice. And then we figure out the impact to the offensive actions. And then we say, if you're taking an offensive action, roll your dice. And so everybody's rolling at once. Everybody's able to look at their character sheet and see, I was successful or I was not successful. And then they can take a little bit of time to figure out how successful they were, figure out damage, and figure out effects after. And then the thing that really makes us cook is we call for the game master to weave a narrative line at the end of each turn, or we call them phases, at the end of each phase, because it is absolutely possible for multiple characters to take actions that all interact with each other. And so the game master then looks at how the numbers played out and says, okay, here is what just happened in the last 1 second of game time.
Yeah.
And so it really does, it gives a good element of the what you get from narrative first games. It gives you a good element of crunch, of being able to have some system mastery. It gives a good element of, like, you just don't have a static armor class that you're trying to hit. It hits a nice balance point of all of those without slowing down.
No, that sounds great. I quite like that as a way of handling
we certainly think it's
response. Fun. It's fun. I think it's fun. I think that sounds good.
It does.
Sounds cool.
I've just got a quick question. ARB, what does ARB stand for?
I wrote that down. Action roll base. See, look, I was listening to you guys. I wrote it.
Yes.
We're toying with changing that to be called success threshold.
Right.
And the reason being is that we have success value, success levels, and success rating, which are different ways in which you can grade your success. And so pairing that with success threshold gives a coherent language for success. But currently it's still action roll base.
Okay. And situational modifiers, are they the standard kind of a plus number or minus number, depending on what the situation is? Yeah,
the only real issue is they're directionally opposite. And that does take a little bit of challenge, that can present a challenge. And so it's just worth slowing down in the initial stages until you get that a +2 modifier is a penalty.
Yeah, because it's increasing the number you need to roll by 2. Yeah. It's always applied to the number you need to roll. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And as long as you latch on with, like, both hands to the idea that modifiers are never applied to your dice roll.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
It's all right. We got Thaco. If we could get Thaco, this is fine. This is fine. It's no problem.
It's absolutely fine. And one final thing around the talents is you've got your sub skills within talents. So with my gunnery, would the sub skills be focusing on various types of guns?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So character creation, I could, for example, say I want to be really good with heavy machine guns, HMGs. My 5 would drop to 4, but my heavy machine guns would go up to 6, if I understand correctly. Yeah. So you sacrifice a bit of your overall skill on any gun for hyper skill on that particular gun.
Right. Yeah. And you can refine that even further by taking a mastery. And also, to your point, yes, you may do that at character creation if you're doing full creation. You can also do it in character advancement later on as well. So,
and when you do that, your base talent does not decrease.
Yeah, you're just increasing the specialism, which would. So I take it if you have no specialisms, it's just the base talent that you're using, and then any specialism would be a bonus to that base talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it cheaper to advance a specialism compared to the base talent then?
Indeed, it is.
Yeah. Okay. This is all pretty good. Yeah. And the final thing, I think, to wrap up character creation, because
I
it
can
sounds...
see the noggin turning. He's
Oh, it
got
is.
a maths question.
So you
It's
talked about
coming.
aura being your level, or effectively how powerful you are. The stronger you are, the greater your aura. What does that actually, what does that do for your character?
Great question. What are you purchasing with those points?
Yeah.
So aura is indeed a measure of how effective you are as a person, right? And you can re-roll a number of failed rolls, your aura rating per week. So you have that going for you. This opens up a can of worms on a whole nother mechanic, but you may spend experience to modify rolls capped at 3 times your aura. So once you have some experience and you want to spend it, let's say your aura is at rating 3, then you may spend up to 9 experience points to modify any roll.
Okay. And what do you mean by modify?
1-for-1 basis,
make it pass.
Oh, right. So basically increase it. Got it. Okay.
Well, yes. And importantly, you spend XP before you roll. And once you spend it, it's gone. So you can spend XP and then still fail, which really stings. But, yeah,
You could also roll already pass, and you've already spent the XP, so you're overdoing it.
Right. But at that point, you've got success levels, right, which you can use to good effect. So that won't be sad if that happens.
That's okay then.
Yeah.
Is that like rolling 6s in Shadowrun? I used to like rolling 6s in Shadowrun.
There's a couple of other things that you can do with aura that tie into some other mechanics. We've talked about very briefly, Seth mentioned Naosh, which is, again, how your character interacts with supernatural powers if they have them. It's the closest thing we have to a character class, but it's not even remotely like that. It's, if you think of a character class as a collection of abilities that your character has, this is more about the abilities that you have. How do they function? And both in a narrative and mechanical sense. And there's a Naosh that is called Sorene. We use, for Naoshi in particular, we use a lot of in-game language words to describe them for immersion. Sorene being an extraterrestrial word meaning inner power. So these are essentially mutants is the way to think of them. But not just mutants, like things like anything that historically, like a vampire, a werewolf, things of that nature would probably be expressed as a Sorene in our game. Beowulf or similar kind of super heroic characters would be Sorene more than likely. Sorene can add half their aura to any roll a number of times equal to their aura per game week. Right. So so you can just, your force of personality, you just do better. And then the last thing that you can do with aura that is really cool is you can link abilities to it. So the idea is, a good example of this is the orc species in our game are military. They really are like military strategists. We wanted to move away from the dumb orc smash trope. And so there is probably some level of inspiration from Warhammer 40K as well with these, but they are naturally gifted military strategists. And as a species, if you play an orc character, you start with the military tactics trait or talent, and that talent is linked to your aura. So what that means is you add your aura in calculation of your ARB. And so it's just something that is innate to you, and you do it very well just by virtue of who you are. And any character can choose to do that with something. And what you're doing is you're using this talent to define your character a little bit. That you're saying, this is something that is no longer something I do. This is something I am. And so it's a neat tool, and mechanically it gives you a nice bonus.
Okay, fantastic. So apart from character creation, where you can increase your aura, how else? you earn experience during the game session.
And so we opened this up earlier, right? In that there are ways to spend experience. In Altered World, experience is a spendable currency. And there's this tension between modifying rolls during gameplay, which sometimes can be vitally important, like literally life or death for your character, versus saving that experience and using it for character advancement later on. And, everything that can be raised, there's a way to figure out how much it is. Like if you want to raise a primary attribute, that's going to tend to be a little bit more expensive than perhaps raising a talent, something like that. And it also depends on how close you are to your maximum. So going from if a Tim and Veer has a strength of 10 and they want to hit their maximum of 11, that's a lot more expensive than a Tim and Veer with a strength of 2 going to a strength of 3 because they haven't come close to meeting their potential yet.
Okay. Can you purchase aura with XP?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
anything that you can purchase at character creation with your CCPs can be purchased or increased with experience later on in play.
So effectively, even though you got this kind of level, it is a level less system. It's a skills-based system. So no class. Your character's defined really by the skills they have, the talents they have, and any abilities. So anything else they purchased. An aura is almost this intangible power within you that can fuel other things that you may have purchased. So could you create a character that really doesn't care about aura?
Absolutely. You could start with a rating 0 if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could.
Yeah, because you can't spend XP to modify your rolls. Yeah. You rely just on luck. The dice will decide whether I live or die.
Yeah. Now, Travis has an idea that goes the exact opposite direction.
Yeah. Conversely, you can have a character. I had this idea for a character probably about a year ago at this point, and I love the idea that we're still coming up with novel ways to manipulate the mechanics to create interesting characters. So imagine this guy. The character is a human Sorene. Right. So he's average Joe guy from appearance. His statistics are all completely unremarkable. He has a boatload of talents purchased at rating 0, maybe rating 1, but all of them are linked to his aura. And his aura is as high as you can possibly get it.
Yeah.
And so now, like 20 times per week, you can add plus 10 to your roll before you even throw the dice. And you can spend up to 60 experience points on a given dice roll at one time. And so it represents this guy who, I don't know how well it would play in terms of longevity, like in a campaign play, but for a one shot, I think of this idea as, this is the guy that everyone looks at and you're like, how do you consistently fall ass backwards into wild success when you have no reason to be that good? And so I think it'd be fun to play for a short shot or a limited campaign, but obviously this is a character that's going to succeed a whole lot. And so that doesn't necessarily leave a lot of room for challenge. And so I don't know that I would want to play it in campaign play, but I wouldn't say that other people can't and have it be fun,
Yeah. Just before we move on to Vicky's favorite subject, and I'm kind of dipping a little bit into equipment. So we'll look at equipment separately, but how do I track the health or how much damage my character can take?
So you have technically 3 different health scores. You have health, spirit, and what we call resolve, which is resolve is equal to your spirit rating. And your health is the sum of your body primary attributes. Your spirit is the sum of your mind primary attributes. There's damage that goes against your health, and there's what we call drain that goes against your spirit. Resolve is, like I said, it's set equal to your spirit, but it is only used in verbal combat. which is a system we haven't talked about. It's relatively unique. I'm only aware of a couple of other games that have a system even remotely like what we do. But it resolve kind of refreshes every day. Your health and your spirit might take a little bit longer to go. Originally, there was a pretty pronounced death spiral that you had. Let's say you had all your body attributes are 3, so you have 12 hit points to be, just to use that term. When you take 3 points of damage, you would start incurring a +1 penalty on everything you did.
Ouch.
Yeah. And then when you get to 6, now you're at a +3, and then you're at a +5, and then when you're taking 12 damage, you're in a coma.
Yeah.
And so we like the philosophical concept that as your body gets wounded, it becomes harder and harder to be successful at things. Mm-hmm. But from a playability perspective, that's really harsh, especially when you consider that if you're also taking drain, those penalties stack.
Oh, this is the problem Shadowrun had. It was the moment you took your first light wound, it was downhill from there because you had a penalty to everything going forward, and if you took a light fatigue, that was it. You were done. Plus 2 to everything. Yeah.
And so
how do we kind of resolve that tension, right? Where we do want to say yes, like as you get hurt, as you get banged up, things should be a little bit more difficult, but not. We want to turn that dial down so it's not this death spiral where, you take one wound and all of a sudden you're done, right? You just need to go find it. You need to run away so you can heal. That's not very much fun. So we kind of reconfigured that system a little bit so it's more forgiving once you take 75% of your total health. That's when you start incurring penalties.
So instead of it being a quarter each time, so you're 3, 6, 9, and so forth, you start at 3/4, 9, effectively. So once you've got 3 hit points or less, given our 12 example, 3 health or less, that's when you take the penalty.
Right.
Yeah. So before that, scratches and bruises and superficial damage, but you're still being worn down.
Yeah. And we didn't want, it's this, if you're familiar with the experiment of the 1 hit point dragon, that's kind of the idea that we didn't necessarily want to have that for the PCs. And that's really what you've got, right? That, in D&D, if you've only got 1 hit point, you are just as effective as if you have 100. And that doesn't reflect the way things really work. And while realism is a questionable value in a fantasy game, we do we lean towards believability. Mm-hmm. And so I think the idea that I'm just never affected by anything until I'm dead doesn't really, it stretches believability.
Yeah, it's the yo-yo as well. It's the I'm up, I'm dead. I'm up, I'm dead.
Yeah. The only other thing along those lines is, and we can get into this more during the equipment section a bit. Attacks do chances of death or stun. Yeah. And so originally this was if the attack penetrates your armor, you might just die automatically. We toned that down at first by saying you make your resistance roll against it essentially, and the result of your die determines how long you're dying for. So you've got time to have effects to fix that. And we've subsequently even adjusted it a little bit more to where there's now a damage threshold. You have to take a certain amount of damage before chances of death are applied. And then they are, the other thing was that they used to be modified, jacked up by higher success levels. And so we have taken that out. So for example, if you get shot with a pistol round, and the person has enough success levels to give you 10 points of damage from that round, you are trying to resist 2 chances of death, which is basically roll 1d10 and you're trying to meet or exceed the number 2. And so you're 80% chance of survival, but things could go poorly.
This is the 1d10 roll you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the only one that we're probably going to end up keeping for sure.
So, Travis, Seth, what have you got in the way of a magic system? I personally love playing spellcasters. I loved spellcasters when I was playing Shadowrun. I loved spellcasters in Earthdawn. I loved spellcasters in D&D. That they could have been better. What is your magic system like?
It's very open. Like we were talking about earlier, you have a handful of different Neashi that you can choose, and they will give you different ways to access magic or supernatural powers. But anybody who chooses to go that route can access any power. We don't have limited spell lists. You could think of the list of powers that we have as one all-inclusive spell list, and it's written to be very customizable, very modifiable, and personalizable. Not sure if I'm good with that one, but you can personalize it. Generically speaking, there's a power called energy attack. Well, that's what it does, right? You attack somebody with energy, but what kind of energy? Are you using microwaves? Are you using fire? Are you using psychic energy? When you create the power, when you purchase the power, you get to fill in some of the blanks and make it yours.
Okay, so essentially, if I wanted to create a sort of fireball that does ice, that would be perfectly allowable.
Yeah, so that would be, just out of, there's actually two different ways you can approach it, and it really is a matter of what you mean by attacking with ice, right? So we have matter attack. So you could create ice that the ball of ice does damage to things, or you could do energy attack and it would be cold. And then you would just apply, there's a power variation that can be applied to any power, that would be make it from a single target to an area of effect, and you can expand or contract that area of effect. You can sculpt it. You can apply friend or foe designation. There's all kinds of different ways you can do this. Many of which will make the power more expensive. But there are also ways in which you can reduce that. You can give it an experience point cost. You can say, I can only use this power once per day, or whatever, things like that. You can say, I have to have this, particular
magic feather
magic feather, whatever. And one thing that is kind of unique, not entirely unique, but our spells or our powers all kind of function like cantrips, and that you don't have a limit to the number of times per day you can cast them. You do have to roll to see if it manifests, and there are time constraints to how long that takes for them to manifest, but that depends on your Neash, which is one of the mechanical differentiators that Neashi provide.
Okay, so have you, it's a good one. Can I teleport with spells?
Yes.
How far?
Give me 1 second and I will give you exactly the,
There's math that goes into that.
So we have
there's math. Dean, you figure the math.
So teleportation, you move in. So I've got my Obsidian up that has our notes for it. So with teleportation, it's a power that costs 7 power points, so 0.7 CCPs. You move instantly from one spot to another without physically crossing the space between. Distance equals 2 to the success rating meters. So what that means is when you roll your dice, if you're successful at activating your power, you have your success rating it's a derived measure, and it specifically applies to a broad category of powers that teleportation is in. We call them scripted powers. They function like a one-use a spell. It's a discrete casting. And so your success rating is equal to the success value, which is the rating of the power, plus the number of success levels that you got on your power action roll.
Okay.
And so that becomes the exponent times 2 meters that you can teleport. And so every casting is probably going to be a little bit different. And so it's not, there's not a like, I know I can always teleport 50 meters. That being said, you can always say that if I have it'll have a floor, right? So if your rating is 4, you know that if you are successful, you will always be able to teleport. I think it's 2, 4, 8, 16 meters. And then there's the other thing is that if you're teleporting to a place that you cannot physically see, there is a possibility that you may come in off target.
Yeah.
And we also put in there a mechanic of if you are trying to teleport another person that you are touching against their will, they can resist. And so it may not work on them.
Have you got any restrictions to say if I have 2 buddies? You see, I have been scarred. I was scarred by D&D. I had an abjurer. I loved my abjurer, but she turned into an Uber. I literally spent the whole time taking people places and moving them around the battlefield. It was ridiculous. So no, I don't like teleport. But the reason I was asking about it is because it makes worlds smaller. So I'm trying to figure out if this is a sort of thing that I can like hop city to city, or it sounds more like it's I hate to use a D&D phrase, more like a dimension door type. Thank you for that, Freya.
I have no idea what happened there.
She came along and slapped the camera with her tail. She walked behind the screen and slapped the camera.
I thought you suddenly stood up and sat back down again.
I was like, do you have one of those new computer screens that like follows your hand gestures?
She was teleporting what was going on.
Yeah.
I do have one of those newfangled cameras, and I've turned it off so that all I need to do is move it by hand now because it was annoying me. But no, I've got a Freya who's an assistant. She is head of HR. She does keep me on the straight and narrow. And obviously I wasn't paying attention to the camera enough. So she told me off. I have to do as I'm told. Sorry, viewers, about that. Anyway.
That's all right. So
I would say purchase when you just spend the 7 points to get the out the box version of teleport, it's a little bit more localized. If you want to ramp it up, there are ways to do that, right? Oh gosh, what's that power variation called, Travis?
So there's 2. There's I think there's one called extend power. So what you could do is you could change that base number that gets that the exponent is applied to. So you could make that you could pay to make that a 3 or a 4 or whatever, and that locally changes it. But you can also do what's called a quantifier change. And so you can go from meters to what's the 10 meters, like decameters to like heptameters to kilometers. And so
hang on a second. Yeah. Have I just heard 2 Americans talking about meters?
Yeah. We chose to use metric. That has both business implications that we realize that America is not our only market, but it also has to do with the narrative of the game world.
Yeah, no, I get why you've done it. It's just that I think this is the first time we've done 16, 17.
Oh God, this is okay.
Yeah.
They did teach us metrics in school, and some of us paid attention.
Well, and honestly,
I love it.
Honestly, the fact
this
that you
is
guys
this is 24. You're our 24th.
We're 24th spotlight, and it's the first time someone has used metric.
Well, the real funny part is you can actually blame the British measuring systems for the fact that we use metric, because in particular with distance, we're like, okay, so we got feet, and then you've got yards, right? So if we change from feet to yards, that's a a 300% increase, but then you go to what's next is like furlongs and chains, and then furlongs, and then miles, and then you go to leagues, and every one of them. What the problem was is that you would spend the same amount of points, and you would get a different scale of how it changed. And so we're like, let's just go to metric, and then and then what we could do, and this plays to how we manipulate the points, is we set it so that, for example, if you wanted to multiply the number by 10, that costs 10 points, right? But if you want to change it from meters to, I think, again, I always get this one wrong because this is one of the metric that we don't learn. The next step up, that is, I think it's decameters. That's a unit of 10 meters. That only costs 9 points. So there is a slight cost savings by recognizing that you can just change the unit of measure rather than saying we're going to multiply by 10.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it was, I don't know, a year and a half ago, something like that. We decided we were going to go metric. And it was when we were overhauling the powers chapter that we're like, this is just so painful.
Actually, Uber Natürlich, were they metric?
There was one other that was metric, yeah.
Uber Natürlich.
I think it was Uber Natürlich because they're European.
And
not set in a medieval.
They're cheating.
Setting.
We're working harder.
They were. It was a fabulous little game. You should check it out, and it's based. So they based it in Germany, but the games producer themselves, they're from Croatia. So it's a really interesting system. Yeah. So if you want to see another metric
based on
to have
Eastern
a look
European horror.
Eastern European horror.
Yeah,
nothing at all like yours.
A game called Metro. It's similar to that. It's that kind of horror. Yeah. Anyway.
But back to this game, because this is the fun game we're looking at now. So that's teleport. Answers that question.
Here, we challenge you to come up with a power that we don't have. And for just about anything in the book, if there's something that you want to do and we haven't covered it, at least generically, the player and the game master can have a conversation and find a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and we put rules in there about how to do that.
Oh, that's good.
If you are interested in being able to do certain spells, magic powers, whatever, the answer is yes. Now, most of the time, I'm going to say we've got a spell, a power that addresses that. I can't think of any time somebody has tried to meet that challenge and stumped one of us. So
yeah, no,
it's pretty much.
We've got about 140 distinct powers.
That's cool. But I've got a question that may be linked to your mythos and how all of that works. So if I'm a magic user, and I will relate it back to a D&D spell because people will be used to that, but it's the spell I used to like in, I think it was 2nd edition, where you would actually create your own pocket dimension.
Okay.
There's a number there. So which one are you referring to? Mordenkainen's Mansion or
no
Rope Trick, Tiny
Hut?
No,
none of those. The ones where I can actually set up my own plane.
Oh no, I know. It's Demiplane.
Demiplane, yes, that's the one. So, and this is why I said it may touch on your mythos. Is have you got the ability to do things like demiplane, where you've got different sort of external to I'm going to call it your prime worlds, but it all depends how your mythos works. Have you got the abilities to do things like that?
Yeah, there's a. Oh, go ahead.
Just yes, absolutely. Yeah. Within the mythos of the game, there are absolutely different dimensions to be addressed. And then you can get into the question of what's in between dimensions. But absolutely, if you wanted to access a private dimension, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like stuff like that. It's always good fun, especially as a magic user. It allows you to do what I call really snazzy, cool things.
We're a fan of really snazzy, cool things.
Yeah, really snazzy, cool things.
within the milieu of Altered World, we've only got 3 defined dimensions. But again, as Seth alluded to, there's these interdimensional spaces that you could go to do that. And in particular, the power that we have is portal, that just opens a portal that can cover either physical space or it can go interdimensional. And that just depends on how you do it. And so if you wanted to define that it was a portal to a specific interdimensional space, pocket dimension, then yeah, you would absolutely do that. And that would actually probably reduce the cost overall, because what you're doing is you're saying it is limited in scope. It can only go here, as opposed to the base power portal. You can put it wherever you want. It's just a matter of where you're choosing to do it at the time.
Could people break into my little pocket space because it's mine?
You would. That's one of those things that's I would take as a game master adjudication. If I were running a campaign and you asked that question, I would say that it would matter if they could locate it.
Yeah, it's always hard to.
If they could locate it, then yes, they could show up, unless you chose to make some kind of wards that would prevent people from doing that.
So they could almost do like use something to track you, find you when you were on the pocket plane, and then use that as a conduit to get to the pocket plane. I like it. It's got some nuance there. But there's some spells that tend to, in different games, actually significantly affect the way that the game is played. And this is not necessarily related to arcane users. I'm thinking more of the divine. Right, couple of questions on spells that divine casters can use. Can they bring people back from the dead?
Yes.
Right? Can they divine stuff in the future or the past? There you go.
Yes. I'm not sure. I would have to look through our powers list. I'm not 100% certain that is a defined power. There are traits that allow you to do that. But mechanically, the way it works is essentially you get pools of points that you can apply to rolls moving forward.
Okay.
I'll take a look and see. That would be. I mean, I'm looking at the section of powers that it would probably fall into right now.
We've had discussions about powers that alter time specifically, and we're holding off on those for more narrative reasons. So that's why we ended up going with traits on that instead of powers. It allows more people to access them. You don't have to go down the route of having one of the Neashi. So anybody could have that without having to have supernatural powers, so to speak. And it's more limited, right? We didn't want to get into like time loops and stuff like that, time travel necessarily.
That always gets complicated, and it always,
But if you wanted to go that route, you could. If you had a base power that let you go forward or backward in time, then you could modify it to where, like, instead of physically traversing that distance on the timeline, you might simply traverse it with a remote seeing eye, so to speak.
Yeah,
and that would be powers or something.
Yeah, and that would be, I mean, you would either create a whole new category, like you said, of prophecy powers. That we have a group of powers that we call thaumaturgics, which are, wonder working. And the other thing that would allow you to do, you might get very, very close to what you're talking about with combining powers, which is something that we allow you to do. So as Seth said, with remote sight is a power that we already have defined. And if you took you could combine remote sight power with something that gave the effect of the premonition attribute or trait, and you could make it a power that you could cast. And so that would, there's enough in there where if you see something that's not defined, you can usually pretty easily find something that is a good basis of comparison to then build your own power or trait or whatever you want.
Cool. Okay. So we talked before, and it seemed as if, if you could get the way that you got shot and everything, there is a potential of some very lethal damage knocking around. Have you got any healing spells?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got those really kind of fall into two categories. There are ones that you would think of that replicate things like a Wolverine or Deadpool healing factor that only affects you. And then there are
regeneration type stuff, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And then there are ones where you can give people health back or regrow tissue that has been damaged or bring them back from, or stop them from dying. There's not really what I would call a true defined resurrection power, but we do address the idea that you can combine a couple of powers that would bring people back to life after death.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm looking.
Oh.
I'm trying to think. So where we were talking about divinations and you were talking about your sort of scrying, is there anything anyone can do to protect themselves from that? Any protections from either technology or others spying on them?
Sure. I mean, there's an invisibility power, and the way it's written is the out-the-box base level of the power is what you think of for invisibility, right? You can't see me. It does specifically say if you want to be invisible to other wavelengths like infrared, ultraviolet, stuff like that. So if you wanted to be invisible to psychic vision, you could just have a version of the power that does that.
Cool.
And really all you're doing is you're just changing the effect, right? It's still functionally you are invisible. You're just changing how it functions.
It's just, yeah.
To what?
So someone can see you, but they can't. Yeah.
Psychically
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of off the top of my head, I'm sure. And this is what we want to encourage in players and game masters is find creative ways to get there, right? If you're starting your question with, can I? Then we want to have a game where you can get to yes. You should be able to do the things that you want to do. Will it come with a cost? Yes, it's a point-based system. And you might be asking for a pretty heavy lift, so it might be expensive in your character creation budget. Something like that probably wouldn't be prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, I think, Seth, you really hit on a good point, right? The operative question with Altered World is not, can I do this? It's how can I do this?
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about the game is that there's almost always 2 to 3 different paths that can arrive at the same end mechanical result. And so it allows for a lot of flavor between characters.
You see, this just shows, right, how I didn't read everybody's names to start off with properly on screen, because I just laughed when I read your curmudgeon in chief. That's awesome. Love that. Excellent. So is there anything that I haven't covered on spells and magic that you think I should delve into?
I think there's probably a lot of value in talking about Nayashi.
Let's do that then.
Seth, you want to take that off?
Sure. Like we mentioned earlier, this is the mechanic by which you're able to access supernatural powers. And so there are 5 ways to do that, right? And if we list them off real quick, you've got your Calcatro, and these are all kind of made up in-game words, so they're just fun to say. Go ahead, practice in the mirror at home after you've watched the video 3 or 4 times. You've got your Calcatro, you've got your Sorene, and you've got your Ninshene. The other 2 are going to sound more familiar to everybody. You've got mages and you've got priests. And so a Calcatro, a Ninshene, a Sorene, a mage, and a priest all walk into a bar, right? They've all got the same power. Call it energy attack, right? That's a nice popular one that people can understand. I shoot out a beam of energy and it hurts people or things. The Calcatro is going to be able to make that happen the quickest. But by and large, they're probably going to be the weakest out of all of them. They certainly hit a sort of soft cap early on. The mage will be among the most consistent with it. The priest, they can amp the rating up quite a bit because they're not getting it through themselves. They're praying to a divine being to be allowed access to that power, so they can, if they feel like taking time, they can have that thing come off at an incredibly high rating. The trade-off is time, right?
Yeah, time is precious.
Yeah, in combat, it sure is. And then let's see, who else have we got? The Ninshene. They're actually going to have the most variability in how long it takes for that power to come off, the way they access their powers. And we can get into the narrative reasons behind all of that.
Yeah.
And then the Sorene, they're probably going to struggle with that particular power the most. Something Travis brought up in passing earlier. There are different categories of powers. So each of these different Neashi can have any of the powers, but some of them do better with certain categories. Like the mages are going to shine if they take scripted powers. Conversely, the Sorene are going to they're going to struggle with those scripted powers. Vice versa, there's a category called automatic powers. And for Sorene, those are just always on, right? So if you take a power like armor and you want to magically make yourself tougher, more resistant to damage, the mage has to cast that spell, right? It's going to take a while. But the Sorene, because it's an automatic power, they just have it. So when you're building your character, you look at the powers you're interested in, and you might pick your powers based on the strengths of the Neash that you chose.
Yeah, and so the narrative, I think, is really a lot of fun with this too, right? So Sorene, we like to talk about them in a certain order because it reinforces the narrative of the game world, because we tend to address them in the order in which they appeared in the world. So the Calcatro, it's useful to think of them as psionicists. That's not really what they are. It's a subtle distinction that they essentially believe things into existence through force of will. And the reason it's useful, the reason we don't like calling them psionicists is because that tends to put people in this frame of, I can only do these kinds of things. And it's like, no, I believe a fireball is at your feet so strongly that a fireball erupts at your feet. Yeah. I just warp reality with the power of my mind.
They basically manipulate the world around them. So essentially, it reminds me of the sign of one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their real benefit is that, as Seth alluded to, their powers are very fast.
Because they believe it, and it's there.
And it's just like, boom, it's there. Right. The next one to appear is a Sorene. Sorene are, as we've discussed a little bit, they're kind of like mutants. Their powers are something that is just innate to who they are. And as Seth talked about, that there's certain classifications of powers that are just always on. These are your superheroes, your monsters, things like that. And then the next one to appear were the Ninshene. Ninshene, narratively, what they do is they, if you imagine string theory, right? This idea that every possible combination of events that could ever happen in the entire multiverse, imagine that is now condensed down into a substance. We call that the flux. Mm-hmm. And they essentially reach into the flux and pull out the probability that creates the result that they want. Is the mechanic or the narrative of how they're doing things. Mechanically, what this means translates really to is that the amount of time it takes for them to use a power is different every time because they're reaching in and finding it. Mages, they came next, and what they do is they channel a force called logos through their body. originally in the narrative, this was thought to reside on the astral plane or originate from the astral plane. It's actually defined as it's an energy that exists between dimensions. And so, but what's cool about this is that if they channel a power that is too strong, they can literally burn themselves up.
Ooh, that sounds nasty.
And so, what's that?
That sounds nasty.
Yeah, and you know, in the game world history, there's large numbers of mages when they were first trying to figure out how to do this stuff. They
took too big a bite. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you know, mages, you know, what's cool about mages is, again, we try to subvert expectations, right? People think of mages from D&D and they expect that spells are going to have verbal or somatic or material components. And in our game, that is not something you should assume. Nope. Just because you're a mage doesn't mean you do that. Many mages do, because it reduces the power cost. And so narratively, it's that mages have figured out that using these substances, saying these words, making these gestures, make it easier to focus the energy through themselves.
Yeah.
But it's not a requirement. Like, you may just be able to just slap things through you. And then the last is priests. They clearly, you know, they are channeling the divine power of the gods. Their power limitations are... their power selection is determined by the deity that they choose to serve. And so not every deity, you know, many of these are small g gods. We do have one that we refer to as Ensof, that is the big G god. And Ensof has access to all powers at all ratings, but is very expensive to be a priest of Ensof. And Ensof, material, you know, narratively, he represents, I say he, we kind of take the idea that Ensof, as I understand, is a Hebrew term that means God at their most transcendent. And so we tend to fall into the gendering of Ensof, but in reality it's they, because they're beyond gender. But Ensof tends to represent itself in religions that are the kind of monotheistic patriarchal deities. You know, so you got Christianity, Judaism, Islam, some versions of Buddhism may fall into this, Sikhism. So there's Zoroastrianism potentially could even fall into that realm. So you can really flavor your character how you want by, you know, and the other thing that's interesting is that a priest by occupation does not mean you are a priest by neosh. And so we actually have this subtle, almost kind of a joking narrative that we kick around every once in a while, that there may be an occasion where, like, a figure like the Pope is actually not a priest, but is a mage. And that is kind of hidden from the world. But no, that's kind of the narrative differentiation that we have with our Neashi.
Yeah, mechanically, if you want to take a Neash, what you're saying is you're going to peel off 3 of your character creation points at creation and dedicate those to spinning them on powers, right? So you're not going to be as good in other areas potentially because you're spreading those character creation points out.
Yep.
So you could be normal and not spend any points on powers, or you could pick one of these 5 Neashi, spend at least 3 CCPs on them, more if you feel like it, and go to town with powers.
That sounds really interesting. Definitely a nice, unique way of dealing with spells, and a nice little magic system there. So thank you very much. Which means, Dean,
it's gear.
We're onto your favorite stuff.
You are what you use and carry, obviously. And first question, we always ask this. Shopping? No. Let's assume before you go shopping, you need to understand. Have you got an encumbrance system? How much can you carry?
Honestly, like we kind of go back and forth with this. There is a defined amount that you can carry based off your strength, right?
Yeah.
But unless you're being wild with it, like we don't really nail that down. I think I'd have to look. I think we did say that in general, your character is assumed to be able to move around and not carry anything on a daily basis that they can't do their daily activities with, right? If you're picking up something heavy in an exceptional situation, then perhaps the game master may apply movement penalties or whatever. But in general, we don't really even go for the slot-based system. It's just like, this is what you've got. And if you're trying to say you're carrying around a howitzer and you don't have a strength high enough to do it, then maybe it's not a great idea. Like, it's not going to work out for you.
Cool. Okay, so I find that quite. It's the juxtaposition of this lovely mathy system, and then when it comes to gear, it's you just use common sense,
right?
And I like it. I like it. Oh, if you got a cat, that's destroying stuff on your side.
Yes,
you've been muted. Yes, the cats do that. Their tail brushes across the mute button. Fantastic. So, weapons and armor, we've alluded to it. We kind of talked about it, but I'd like to get a good understanding. How do you deal damage with a weapon? Given that you've got your 2d10, and I'm assuming weapons don't have any damage dice. It's all done on these success levels. And how does armor protect you?
Yes and no. So weapons don't have any damage dice. What they have is a damage rating. And so what that shows is once you've hit your success threshold, once you've determined that you have hit, then it does that much damage. And damage is expressed in two axes, I suppose you could say. The amount of health that it will attack and the chances of stun or death that it might inflict or invite, depending on how you want to look at that. So for instance, you might have a pistol round that does 3k1. So that means it's going to threaten 3 points of your character's health, and there would be one chance that it could kill you versus rolling on a d10.
Okay. Yeah, and the way that we end up with a less deterministic damage system is that when you make your attack roll, we've talked a couple of times very briefly about the idea that you spend success levels. You spend success levels on different things. Yeah. And in general, that falls into three categories. You can spend success levels to be better at the thing you're doing. You can spend success levels to be faster at the thing you're doing, or you can spend success levels to look cool while you're doing it, which can carry social bonuses. In combat, in general, people tend to say, hey, I'm going to spend it on being better, which means I do more damage. And so what happens is when you hit your target, you have the base damage rating of the weapon. So as Seth talked about, the pistol round does 3k2, right?
3k1.
He's 3k1. It is actually 3k2, but
it is 3k2.
Yeah.
Oh, look at Seth. He's calling you out.
That's par for the course. That's fine.
Yeah, we have long ago settled into the idea that I am going to remember the numbers way better, and he's going to remember like narrative stuff way better than I do. And with firearms in particular, or any kind of projectile weapon, the ammunition that you're using determines the damage that's being done. So a rifle doesn't do more damage because it's a rifle. It does more damage because it's a rifle round. And they are just more damaging. But so a base pistol, we call it a PS round or small pistol round, equivalent to something like a 9mm, does a 3k2. What you would do is you would take half your success levels and add that to your damage. I would prefer it if it were straight success levels, but very quickly you get to like really high numbers. And so we say, we got to scale it a little bit. And then that number, you calculate your damage, and that is applied against the armor rating of the target. And the armor reduces that number, and then whatever's left is imposed on them as health damage. If you meet our current system is now, if you meet a threshold of 10 points of damage that you impose in a single attack, that's when the target will have to roll it to resist the chance that you've just killed them. And so that's where you get to, they roll 1d10, they're trying to meet or exceed the chances of death of that weapon. And you end up with, if they succeed, then they're still alive and everything's fine. If they're not dead, or if they fail the roll, they have a certain window of time where they might still be alive.
Okay.
With a pistol round, it's interesting. They are not generally lethal, right? Because they only have that K2. But if you fail, you've really only got 1 second before you're done. Because the number that you roll on the die is the number of seconds that you have before your character is dead.
Ooh.
Okay, so the K2 the number you need to roll to resist being killed?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So you got like an 80 or 90% to survive. But
if you roll a 1,
yeah,
1 second.
Sorry. But mechanically, that's a failed roll, right? Yeah. And so you can use your aura to re-roll it. And you can spend experience to be able to push past it. So that's why Seth talked about, we have this real tension in gameplay of, do I spend experience points now to survive? And, things like hand grenades do like K20. And so
you have to, absolutely. If it hits the threshold of 10, you have to, on a D10, you're not going to get 20. Yeah.
And that's things
we
like
haven't figured out how to do that.
Just kill people. Right. That's what they do. And so we struggle with this, and there's kind of this truism in the game design world that the longer it takes to make a character, the less lethal your game should be. And I don't know that I really like that, because what that means is the only meaningful way to engage with your game is through combat. We say it takes a long time to make a character because you have so many options. You can make exactly the character you want. You should be really careful about getting into combat.
Yeah.
Because it is dangerous. And so it should not be taken lightly.
Yeah, you're gonna focus on trying to avoid combat rather than actually entering combat. Combat is going to be your last resort.
Which not necessarily. There will be people who want to play, who like combat and they want to get into combat. Great, but be aware of what you're getting into, I think. And if you make a combat-focused character, there are all kinds of things you can do to mitigate some of these concerns. But yeah, it's designed to be deadly. It is designed to make a thoughtful person pause.
Yeah, and it just allows for a broader range of mechanisms by which you interact with the world. And so...
Now, there is a different mechanism where you can go the hurt feelings route. We do have verbal combat.
Yes.
And, tabletop role-playing games are an imagination game, right? And we start these as young children before we're introduced to this as a hobby and before there are rules. Bang, bang, I killed you. No, you didn't. I have a force field. Okay, so we come up with all these great rules to adjudicate that, right? Well, what happens when it's like, hey, I need you to, go over there and, I don't know, man the store. Well, you're not the boss of me, right? That's the equivalent of I have a force field or no, you didn't. So we have rules so that characters can navigate who's more persuasive or who's more forceful or dominating. And those don't tend to be as deadly. Nobody dies from hurt feelings in this game, but you could capitulate. You could let the winning party have their way.
And to kind of put a bow on this and then get back to equipment, one of the things that we struggle with is, we wanted a game where it was absolutely possible to build a character that can stand up in the middle of a gunfight and say, "Everybody, put your guns down," and that will happen.
Or at least you've got a chance.
Right. right? That it's possible for you to convince people with a single sentence to stop fighting. But we also
I've got a question on that. I'm going to interrupt you and ask a question on that. Does this mean you actually encouraging people to use their powers against other players, not just against the opponents that are being
we don't encourage it,
by the
we
GM?
recognize that it can happen.
Yeah, our thought process is with verbal combat between player characters is always has to be consensual in the moment. That we say, yes, we both consent that we are going to allow the dice to determine what's going to happen here. I'm going to choose to surrender my individual agency to the dice. If they don't want to do that, that's fine. And then the other thing is we also look at if the players can do this to the NPCs can do it to the players.
Yeah.
And so the way that we mitigate that from an agency perspective is a player character has the option to either choose to play along with the effect or whatever the effect was can impose penalties on doing anything other than what they've been directed to do.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can do whatever you want, but we're not going to take your agency, but we are also not going to say that it's simply not possible for somebody to walk up and be so convincing that your character should do what they say to do. Because that happens in real life. And so we wanted to be able to model that in a way that was respectful of individual agency.
So if an NPC could walk up to a player, turn around to the player, command them, come on, you're coming with me. I've got this big box to move and you're strong and you're going to give me a hand. You fail, you're defeated in that verbal combat, but you decide as a player, I'm not going to do it. I've now got a penalty. And that's because my player's fuming. How dare he tell me that I should go and help him? I'm not going to help him, but I've got the penalty because internally I'm now in this turmoil and I'm angry. And
that's a real good way to put it. Yeah. And I mean, we leave it to players and characters to come up with the narrative, but I really love that one. I really love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds fantastic. I mean, it's, I can see that working.
I've had to capitulate to the cat.
Oh,
I have now got a cat that has just decided to take over the whole of my desk, has pushed my keyboard under the monitor, and is just basically lying there. So
it turns out that cats are masters of verbal combat.
She is a master of verbal combat. She has won this encounter, and I have fairly and squarely lost.
Yeah,
haven't I?
Yes. Right. Can we get back to gear?
Yeah.
Yes, because you love your gear.
I do like my gear. You like your spells. I like physical
things. Take a photo.
My favorite class is human fighter. Always has been, always will be. And what's a human fight without their armor and their weapons?
Yeah.
But we've talked about weapons, and some of them sound quite lethal. I like the idea the damage is based on the bullet. I take it the weapon then gives other properties like how far you can shoot and whether it's really accurate or not.
Yeah. It tends to be rate of fire and range is the biggest determination.
Absolutely. And then the bullet
capacity
is the damage and capacity. So how do you handle things like burst fire, full auto, or is it kind of depending on the gun when you use your action to shoot?
I'll be back in 45 minutes when Travis is done answering you.
So we have basically four things. So, burst fire is a defined thing that we say is 3 rounds. And so it imposes a penalty on your attack roll. It makes it harder for you to control the weapon. But if you hit, you triple the base damage of the weapon.
Ouch. Ooh.
Because what you're doing, and so where this is useful as a tactical decision is to use burst fire against heavily armored targets. Because we have done a lot of work, and I say a lot of work, we really paid attention to it, but we tried to balance the damage capability of individual rounds against the protective capability of different armor levels, so that we represent this idea that a Kevlar vest will stop a pistol round, but it will not stop a rifle round. And so there's this protective level versus damage level that plays in there. But if you've got somebody who's got power armor on and you're using just something like a standard military type 5.56 rifle, you might not be able to do that. You might be able to, there might be no way for you to place your shot well enough to defeat that armor. So we give you a couple of different ways you can mitigate this: burst fire or automatic fire. Full auto functions the same way as burst. It's just burst is a defined number of rounds. Full auto, you can do this is all what we call directed fire. So I'm taking all of my rounds and putting them into one target. I get a penalty equal to the number of rounds I'm firing, and you multiply the base damage by the number of rounds that you fire. And so you can, with a machine gun, you may be able to just punch right through armor because you're just plowing all those rounds in the same spot. The other things that you can do, we have a mechanism for suppressive fire so that you can impose, essentially you can make NPCs not want to move. We give the idea where you can use automatic fire to increase the probability that you will hit a target in an area. So you can spread your rounds out. And we have a mechanism. This is the one that gives Seth conniptions because originally it was described as degrees of arc. And Seth really did not like the idea that we were going into trigonometry terms. And so that actually led to a decision.
Nothing wrong with a bit of trigonometry.
So what we ended up doing, actually, this is part of the reason we decided to go away from squares into hexes, because then it's like, okay, you have a more narrow defined face on the hex. And so you can just say this many rounds is required to traverse this many hex faces, and it makes it a little more easily. And then the last thing you can do is, so what we have: suppressive fire, directed fire, area fire, and then there's a fourth one, and it's escaping me, but there are mechanisms that you can use that modify damage and hit probability that are all kind of tied in with that.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Why would I use a melee weapon?
Social reasons.
Is it purely that? So are they? How are they balanced against a firearm?
You don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah. I see. I got a lot of people who would disagree with that, because you close someone with a knife and you can attack them really fast before they can bring their gun around.
For sure. Yeah. And it is absolutely possible and not even very difficult to build a character that represents what you're talking about.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
But in general, firearms are the superior weapon, which is why we use them.
Yes, especially when your guy's over there and they got to run across a room, and there's no chance at that point. Yeah.
So what we've kind of done, and this gets into the mythos or the milieu of the game, is that the society in this game world is fairly libertarian, but also fairly safety conscious. So you can carry around a gun. In general, most of the time, you're not allowed to carry it around loaded without a permit. And so the idea is that and this is an interesting thing that we really get to, is that in games like this, the characters are almost never really truly good guys, because in games that aren't explicitly fantasy games, the adventure comes in. We are so domesticated at that point that the adventure comes in crime. But so there's ways to do it, but carrying around a sword for personal protection is perfectly acceptable. And so you may be able to enter places without a firearm that would do that. Now, that being said, if your character is built towards being really good with a sword, you can absolutely dominate somebody who's got a gun. And again, you get close to them, and there's traits that can make that work, and it's absolutely viable.
Fantastic. Good. What other sort of gear have you got available? How big is the catalog of toys and gadgets?
We got armor. The armor, I think we've scaled that down, and we've played with the idea of scaling down the weapons a little bit, so that you have a few generic entries, like instead of saying, well, I've got a katana and a broadsword and a hand and a half sword and a bastard sword. And, these are all distinctions that mean stuff to enthusiasts. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, I've got a one-handed slashing melee weapon, and you can skin it however you want. So we've had discussions around that. Outside of weapons and armor, there's a whole cybernetic system so that you can enhance your character that way. And then there's, the miscellaneous equipment stuff that computers.
Yeah, we call them domestics.
Yeah. But, if it's an item that you can have, there's no reason you can't find a way to put it into the game.
Yeah. The other thing is it's still relatively small, but it's by most game perspectives, it's probably pretty robust selection of vehicles.
Nice. Yeah.
And we have a set of rules for having vehicle-borne combat. And so you can, if you want to be in the middle of if your game master wants to have a big enough playing field, you can fly around in your VSTOL or ride around on your motorcycle in the middle of a fight. And we've got rules for tactical maneuverability of those vehicles within that spectrum.
That's cool. One of my favorite things for me to play in Shadowrun when I wasn't playing a spellcaster was a rigger.
Yeah.
So I always liked my vehicles.
Yeah. The cybernetic system, I would say, is probably way more robust than most games. Some of that had to do with the literary influences we were very heavily into Bruce Sterling and William Gibson back in the day. And so there's lots of these very hard sci-fi cyberpunk that really played a factor in influencing this. And so to your point of Shadowrun, there's no such thing as essence that you lose by getting cybernetics. Mike's argument is that if somebody loses their leg in an accident and then gets a prosthesis, are they somehow less human?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
No, they're not. And so a cybernetic leg is simply a very technologically advanced prosthesis. But the system is, in particular, John, of the three creators, John was very, very into making sure that the system was believable. And so every cybernetic system starts with a base computer. You choose the computer that is implanted in your body that runs the programs that make all of your cybernetics work. Every program, every cybernetics augmentation system has a certain, there are NPs, so I think it's nanopulse, but it's basically a memory measure that it requires. Yeah. And so your computer has to have enough memory to run the programs that drive your cybernetics. And they have... this is really kind of a narrative thing, but the idea is that if they give you a cybernetic arm, right, it's not just that they slap this arm onto your body, it's that there are locations throughout your body similar to your lymphatic system that they call site traps. And so there are nanosites that maintain the physical connection between the robotic system and your body because your body is continually attacking it. And so you have to periodically, depending on how advanced your system is, or your systems are, you may have to spend more and more time under maintenance. And so they're called cyber wombs, and you get the stuff that's goo that provides the raw material for the sites to build themselves and maintain the systems. And, there's a narrative location where there was a huge number of people that were what we called flesh deficits. So people who are more machine than man. And they would spend, up to 20 hours a day in their cyber womb, maintaining their systems so that they can function. And there's a set of rules that talks about that, like, if you go without going into a cyber womb for a certain amount of time in game, your systems start to degrade.
That'd be bad.
And so it's a fun system. John really put something together that I think is pretty special. It is a little more complicated. It's not simply like, I want a robot arm, but it's worth it, I think, for the believability.
I like that, because it's got its own sort of wrap around it. So it's like, if you don't have Cyberway, you don't need to worry about it. But if you do, this is the wrap around it. And I think that's really good. It makes it a little bit more modular, doesn't it?
It does. I got,
Dean, you were asking earlier, is a character with a knife or a sword viable in a system where you have technological weapons, right? Well, you talk about this in D&D. Dungeon 2 addresses this all the time, the martial versus caster divide, right? And in a world where some people have access to supernatural powers, if you don't want to go that route as a character in the story that you're playing, well, you still want to be relevant. You still want to be effective in the world. So one route that allows you to be formidable is equipment, right? Cybernetics is a great way to get there, but there's plenty of other equipment that you can have, and there are rules for creating equipment. Frankly, I think we need to go through those. Our chapter on equipment has been on the back burner for a little while, Dean. I'm sorry to report.
It's okay.
It happens though. You've got to refine everything else, and the equipment then sort of feeds into that, which is absolutely
with the relationship between equipment and your character's attributes and the way all of that works. If you're kind of a little bit, just the last little bits of the character being sorted, you don't want to do a lot of work on equipment and find you make a change on the character that affects how equipment works. So I completely understand, and it's a good excuse for us to arrange another one of these, just to go into your whole wealth of cyberware and equipment and
yeah, for sure.
And this actually, I'm going to now, because one of the things that I had a look at your little pack that you sent over, and this sort of leads into probably settings and creatures.
It does. I think that's a good place to move to next.
Yeah. Yes. And it sort of probably combines the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show some of the artwork that you've got. And you can tell us a little bit about it and tell our lovely audience all about your artwork, because I have to say, I'm putting my favourite piece up first because I just loved it. Yes, Freya, thank you. She's keeping me honest here. And what we can do is we can walk through it, and you can tell us, you can give us the context around your creatures and the setting, because I think they
to plug our artist.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course you can.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely, you can plug your artists. Hang on, let me share it. Let me share it, and then Dean can arrange us properly.
It's been our pleasure to work with a few different artists. This is Brandon. Travis, help me out.
Gamma Trap is his Patreon name, and that's what he's on social. Yeah,
that's stunning. I saw that and it really called to me. I love that.
Yeah, we love our artists. So what I'd ask is that whenever we, for all your artists, if you send their socials across, we'll make sure they're included in the description. So if people 100%. Are really taken with the art, they can go visit them and see the art themselves.
Yeah, and hire them if you're looking to hire artists, because these are good. They've done so much. They've been good to work with, and they've just produced such amazing pieces for us.
Cool. Well, as I said, this I absolutely fell in love with. I saw it. I thought, I just adore this. So there you go. There's the one. Right, now we're going to go on. This is more sort of, I see that as more creature or character art.
Yeah, this was drawn by another artist. Her name is Ina Barbu. She's over in Romania, and this is one of the archetype characters that Seth built. She's her name is Sergeant Sanchez, or Blondie, and she is a lot of fun, a really fun character to play.
Excellent. And this one looks fun. Talking about melee weapons there, Dean. I can see this. You've got a gun. It's not a whip. It's a melee. Oh, yes, it is a whip.
No, that's a ponytail. Sorry, I got my camera right in the middle of the art. So,
yeah,
but no, that's a ponytail. But no, I'm looking at the sword. The sword's cool.
So yeah, I like that. It's more like an energy sword from what I can see. It's sort of bristling with energy, and I think it answers your question about melee versus gun, because that to me, that's death from above. Right, the gun person's underneath don't know. That's like, hey, I'm coming in for you.
So this is Shinto. She's a dwerg and she's a calcatro. So dwerg is the species. Think kind of dwarf, short, broad, stocky, super tough. And as a calcatro, she wields those kind of mental powers based on the strength of her belief. So she's manifesting a kind of psychic blade, and she's getting ready to zap people with her psychic zap.
Cool. Really cool. I see. If you wouldn't mind telling him that I've got some vacuuming that needs to be done, because it looks like you do a pretty good job.
So this is, and it's a Romanian name, so I'm gonna goon it up probably. Grigore Popescu, and or Greg Pope. He is a gnome. And what's interesting about gnomes in our game world is they suffer from or enjoy, depending on your perspective, recombinant DNA. And so every gnome looks wildly differently from every other gnome out there. The only unifying characteristic that they have is they all have bumpy skin. Mechanically, gnomes are able to spend character creation points to purchase body part powers at creation. And so this character is actually, there's a fun chain of mechanics here. So he's got, instead of a left arm, he's got a bunch of tentacles. I think in the actual character build, it's 4 tentacles. And on the picture, there's like 7. And then these tentacles are covered with extra eyeballs. And so the extra eyeballs increase his perception. But we also went in and gave him the trait preoccupied. The idea being is that he is so constantly bombarded by visual input that to some degree he has a hard time processing it. And so you can play him in a way almost like a Columbo type character. He is an industrial spy who poses as a janitor.
I love it. You can come and clean my house anytime. And this looks like one of your cities.
Yeah, this is the prime city in our game, the main urban center. This was actually done by a couple of ladies out of Australia. Their name or their Patreon is Grim Maven Maps. And they built us a map of New Tech, which is like I said, is a primary urban center. This is a city that houses about 700 million people in about, I get the math wrong every time. I think it's about 90 square kilometers, maybe 100. No, it's 90 square miles, 150 square kilometers. And it's just off the coast of Lake Erie in Pennsylvania, in the U.S.
And that's quite interesting, because what you've actually done is you've actually taken what I assume is Earth and moved it forward in time, haven't you? So what era is your game?
Yeah.
And backwards.
Yeah.
And sideways.
Yeah. 100%. It went back, it went sideways, and then it goes forward. So it's a very convoluted menu.
All right, so that's where we've got this lovely city. Now, have I got another one? Oh yes, looks very familiar. Looks like what's
yes, I've seen that before somewhere.
Yeah. So this was also done by Ina Barber. This is a cityscape of New Tech. The central hole there is what we call the primary shaft. That is what you're looking at is the flyway, which is about a 1 kilometer hole that goes down. It was originally 11 miles, so whatever that translates to in kilometers, somewhere around 15 or so, straight down into the earth. For about another 6 kilometers or so around that is essentially cities stacked upon each other. So if you imagine New York stacked on top of Tokyo, stacked on top of Manila, stacked on top of Mexico City, that's kind of what you end up with. And that's a big part of how you achieve this incredibly almost ridiculous population density, is that you just dig straight down, and then the megas are what we call these 1 or 2 kilometer tall skyscrapers that are above it. So the city is vertical, and that has to do with the global government taxes by land mass or land area.
I like this one. This one's really cool.
Yeah, Ina did this one for us as well. So this is the premier law enforcement group in New Tech. The Defense Response Mitigation Agency, and
Direct Response and Mitigation Agency. Yeah,
quite so. We had to work hard to get our acronym to be drama, but these are drama boys, and they're incredibly cybernetically enhanced individuals who also have the Sorne Neosh. So they've got like 1 billion credits, bones, dollars, whatever you want to think of, but much value of cybernetics squeezed into their bodies. And they exist to deal with the worst problems, the kind of problems where you don't care about collateral damage, where it's better to level a city block and take that problem out than to risk not taking the problem out. So when these guys are on the prowl, people know to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Cool. And this is pretty cool. This is good.
This is from the original artist, J.P. McCauley, who did all the artwork for the original version back in the late 90s. This is a two-headed dragon who's got his own story. He's a powerful character. And one of the things he likes to do to alleviate his boredom is arrange for people to hunt him. He's sort of land-bound on Mackinac Island. And the fix is in. He's never in any real danger, but for the most part, the people who pay to hunt him don't know that. He allows some of them to live, and sometimes they come out ahead, but most of the time they just get a good story, the ones who live.
Yeah. He's a lot of fun. This is Temujin. He is a priest of Takatis, which is the god of technology. They are very transhumanist. And he is actually in the middle. In this picture, he is in the act of performing a monthly ritual that these priests do, where they absorb a piece of technological material into their body. We chose to make it a little more cybernetic in terms of the way it looks, but I mean, it literally could be something of like, I'm going to absorb this plastic bottle into my arm, and I'm now less human, more machine. In particular, what's going on here is he is absorbing a Vox caster into his face. So he will no longer have a mouth, which is why he also has this tube that goes into his stomach to feed him. And, he's not particularly interested in the niceties of society. And so that's why he wears a robe, bicycle shorts, and one Croc.
Yeah. I mean, come on, guys. A Croc?
Yeah.
Only the one?
He's got more arms. Look at him.
So this is Vicky. Or Vicente. He is a Lorcas. This is one of the 3 alien species or extraterrestrial species we have on our game. They are by culture, and to some degree, culture reinforces biology. They do have this idea of that as a species, they are pacifist. They have 4 arms, so we jokingly call them our 4-armed blue space gorillas. But this character came out of an interesting thought experiment of what would happen if you had a mob sergeant that was nonviolent. And so this is a guy who, because he never engages in violence, everybody knows when he shows up, things tend to calm down a little bit. And he keeps his record clean because he doesn't ever get arrested for anything. And so he's able to lend an air of legitimacy, perhaps, to the organization that he represents. A lot of fun with that guy.
This is Crutch.
This is really, really disturbing, guys. Just marginally disturbing.
I'm so glad you think so. We worked hard to get it that way. Again, hats off to Ina for the wonderful art. Crutch is one of the other alien species that you can play. He's a Morthi. They're these symbiotic organisms that are kind of a lump of protoplasm married to a bacterial colony. So that cloak type structure that you see draped around this character is actually a bacterial colony that exists partway within the flux. Because of their relationship with the flux, these guys make exceptionally good ninshene. They're also sort of merchants by inclination. When they contacted the humans, they were interested in establishing trade. And so here we have Crutch, who understands that humans have pets, but he doesn't really get it because it's a giant spider.
Called Fido.
Yeah.
Fido.
Hey, if he likes him and they're friends, then what's wrong with that?
Yeah, who are we to judge?
In my mind, the background for this image, we haven't ever had the money to pay Ina to do this, but in my mind, the background for this image is kind of a Victorian style reading room or drawing room. And instead of books on the bookshelves, it's just hats. He just collects hats because he knows that people collect things, and that's what he just chose to collect.
That's
trying to fit in, but not quite doing it right. So this is Linda. She is what's known as a Riez. And I forgot to call out this. Linda and Vicky, the Lorcas, were both drawn by I think now a fourth artist. And I will tell you, I do not know how to pronounce his last name. He's Dutch. And so it's Jimmy Nij, I think. Nijs is his last name. And he drew these for us.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
And so
they're very good.
Yeah, she is an illegal alien. She was smuggled onto Earth and given a false identity, and is now works as a security guard at a shipping company called Transfreight. But periodically, she gets shaken down by the people who brought her here and gave her a false identity, and she has to pay them a certain amount of money every week. And her job doesn't quite make enough money to keep her out of their bad graces, and so she periodically has to do things for them. We affectionately refer to her as the combat Cuisinart. She is very much a DPS striker build and uses primarily melee weapons. She is the one that can walk into the middle of a gunfight and just slice people up. No problems. Lots of fun.
Cool. I keep laughing because I keep looking at the screen in front of me when I've got your art on the screen to the side of me, and then I wonder why my mouse isn't moving things fun. This is why I'm well known for having a chair to keyboard interface issue with buttons. Yeah. Now this is really pretty.
This is. Ina did this one as well. This is Maeve. We call her the Puppet Master. She has gone to school to study the arcane arts and become a mage. You might be able to tell from the pointy ears, she is a she, S-I-D-H-E. It's kind of a Gaelic callback. She works for a crime family as well. And all of her spells tend to be kind of nasty in that they focus on mentally dominating and to a large extent controlling other people. So her moniker is the Puppet Master.
Yeah, she's got a power that literally lets her drive somebody like a meat suit. So it's
scary.
Not really, leaning into the idea that enchantment is kind of the worst school of magic out there because it just robs people of their individuality.
This is cool.
Yeah,
I want battle mammoths.
So this is, it's really hard. The image ends up being kind of small, but this is a guy named Solimane. He is a Temenvir, so he's a kind of like a troll. He is he's about 3 meters tall, 3.5 meters tall, and so he focuses primarily on being out in the wild side. He's by experience, he's a forward observer from the military, and the mammoth with him is an independent character. We haven't featured an adventure where you can play with Snowball as part of the game, but she carries around his howitzer, and he is able to shoot that remotely. So she sits in the kind of pseudo NPC. I wouldn't ever expect a player to play her, but she becomes kind of a resource for him. It's really funny. Solimane has the ability to turn into a flying squirrel. And we find that this is the thing that everyone gravitates to. It takes a long time for it to manifest, about 4 seconds in combat, so 4 full turns. But everyone wants to try to do this in combat. And there are some fun things you could do if you were already a squirrel, because the transformation back into your full, 1,100 or 500 kilo glory only takes 1 second. And so you could play around with that, but he's a pretty interesting character.
You see, I think I would turn into a squirrel and I would ride on the mammoth. Yeah,
probably.
That is just awesome. And can I just say, for all the artists that were involved in this, your work is exceptional. It's really good, and it's really nice to see. And I do actually think it brings your world to life. You've explained quite. Where am I? There I am. Hey. And I think when you have a look at what you've talked about all the way through this, I think that art really does set the sort of scene for what you were going for in the way of setting. So I think that is absolutely lovely. So what I'm going to move on to now is talk a little bit about the future, because you mentioned earlier that you like to go to cons. So my first question about the future is, have you got any coming up soon? And if so, where can people find you?
So glad you asked. I think our next one is BrawlCon in September. Travis can spell me out on the dates, I think.
Oh goodness, I have to. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll find it.
I figured he knew off the top of his head. That'll be in the Houston area for players in Texas or who are making the trip. We'd love to have people sit at our table. We've got a couple of different adventures we can run. And cool. We'd love to have folks come and visit with us.
So that's in Houston, in Texas, yeah?
Yeah.
And it's the 18th. It's the 18th to the 20th of September. 18th
to the 20th September, guys. So you've heard it here.
BrawlCon, as in having a brawl. BrawlCon.
It's interesting. It's actually BR&WL. So it's like a Bay Area Role Playing and Wargaming League, I think is what it stands for. But yeah,
I like the play on words. Yeah,
I like that. That's really cool. So
it'll be their second season. They did their first go around last year, and we were there. So we're happy to be returning. Is most of your audience Europe or UK? Or do you know how many?
US.
Majority is US.
We have we actually have a larger audience in the US than we have in the UK at the moment.
Well, for your US-based viewers, if you want to make the trip down to Houston and come see us, we'd love to have a chance to have you sit at our table. We'll run you through an adventure and turn you into Altered World fans.
Fantastic.
The other one that we have that's confirmed currently is the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo in January. So it is Philadelphia in January, so that the weather is what it is. But
it's an indoor con in here. We won't have to role play outdoors.
Yeah. It is indoor. Apparently, that one kind of blew up last year, and it was recommended for us to try and go. They were so wildly successful this past January, that they immediately started selling tickets for next January, like a week after the con was over.
That's cool.
So it really has a possibility to kind of grow. And so it should be a lot of fun.
So get your tickets now, folks. Come see us in Philadelphia. Come see us in Houston.
Brilliant.
I think that's fantastic. And I know that you're on Drive-Through RPG, where you've got some sort of quick start rules that people can have a look at. And you've also got some other games there sort of that people can take a look at. So go check them out on Drive-Through RPG.
Yeah, links will
link in the description.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We also want to plug that we're also on what's called a new marketplace called RPG Trader that just started up within the last month. We're on there as well for people who feel passionately about the use of AI in creative endeavors. RPG Trader has a strict no AI policy, and so that's a good thing for people who really think that matters, who really believe in that. And so we're there as well.
Fantastic. That's really good to hear. And so you've got Drive-Through RPG, you've got RPG Trader. So go check them out. We have been with Travis and Seth. And last question. What else does the future hold? What are your plans with Altered World?
To become Altered World millionaires, as we say over and over and again. We really want to bring this game to the masses. This is why Travis and I started. We've talked about this a few times, but it's worth mentioning, right? Like, we are first and foremost fans of this game. We're taking something that a couple of our friends got real close to the finish line a few decades ago, and we've had to revise some things for sure, right? But we're bringing the spirit of this game out into the world, and we had such a good time with it. We were really blessed to be with the right group of people at the right time. But I don't think it was just that. I think the game stands on its own, and when people have a chance to play it, they tell us that they love it, and we want people to have a chance to do that. We're going to continue making a few more sort of quick play games, short shots, one shots, however you want to think of them, that fall in line with that beer and pretzels kit. Right now, we've got the primary adventure called Extraction Ostinato. We've released Linda's adventure, Dead Drop Blues, and we've got several more in the chute that as we get them done, we'll release them. People can keep playing with these pre-generated characters. Hopefully they like what they see. And once we put the finishing touches on the actual main game manual, we can release that, and then people can start making their own characters and campaigns and play the heck out of this thing.
Sounds great to me.
And to add on a little more specifics, one of the things that we really want to lean into is our intent is that once the rules are all kind of finalized, we're going to release them as an SRD under the Creative Commons. And so the mechanics of the system will be free to use. You'll be able to develop your own campaign setting, narrative world using these mechanics. The other thing is and it'll all be available in there. We've got another idea for an alternate campaign setting where it would be a whole new world for this game. And then over the last week or so, I've been obsessively working on a side project that we'll probably end up releasing that all came to me from a comment on our most recent YouTube video and it basically is a very rules light setting and genre agnostic system with almost no math. As in the characters have no quantitative descriptors on their character sheet. Everything is qualitative. So it's an interesting thing that'll be coming out at some point once we've had time to flesh it out and play test it.
Cool.
Fantastic. Well, that all sounds absolutely fantastic. So, guys, check them out at the cons. Check them out on DriveThruRPG and also on RPG Trader. And Travis, Seth, thank you for joining Dean and I on this indie game spotlight. And with that, we will all say good night and farewell.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
We're out. Lovely. I'm just going to stop recording.
You're doing that? You do that.